I could feel something was wrong the moment I pulled into Lila's driveway. The usual peaceful sounds of her small dairy farm were missing. No gentle mooing from the pasture. No farmhands calling to each other. Just silence. "Thank God you're here," Lila said, rushing out to meet me, her eyes red from crying. "Daisy's sick. Really sick." Daisy was Lila's prize-winning Jersey cow, the foundation of her small but growing dairy business. I followed my sister to the barn where the beautiful caramel-colored cow lay on her side, breathing heavily. "The vet's on his way," Lila whispered. This happened so fast. She was fine yesterday. I put my arm around my sister's shoulders. Ever since she'd used her life savings to buy this 10-acre farm 3 years ago, she'd poured everything into making it work. Her organic milk products were gaining traction at farmers markets across the county. "Ms. Morgan, Dr. Sharma is here." One of Lila's two farmhands poked his head into the barn. The young veterinarian examined Daisy carefully, taking samples and asking questions. His face grew more serious by the minute. "I don't want to alarm you," he finally said, "but this doesn't look like any natural illness I've seen. I'm sending these samples to the lab right away. In the meantime, separate her from the other cows and don't sell any milk until we know what's happening." After he left, Lila collapsed onto a hay bale. "I can't afford this. Not now." "What do you mean?" She handed me a letter. It was the fifth offer from Oak Haven Estates Homeowners Association to buy her farm. The amount had doubled since their first letter 6 months ago. "They want to expand their precious gated community," Lila explained. "My farm is the last piece of land they need." Their president, Beverly Langston, came by yesterday with their final offer. When I turned her down again, she got nasty. "What did she say?" "That my smelly cows were lowering their property values. That they'd find ways to make me sell." Lila looked at me with worried eyes. "You don't think? Let's wait for the test results. Maybe it's just a coincidence." But we both knew something wasn't right. Later that afternoon, I walked the fence line that separated Lila's farm from Oak Haven Estates. The contrast was striking. Her natural, working land against their perfect green lawns and matching beige houses. Through the ornate iron fence, I could see people enjoying their community pool. "Excuse me, you can't stand there." I turned to find a woman in expensive workout clothes marching toward me from inside the fence. Her blonde hair was cut in an angled bob, and despite the heat, her makeup was flawless. "I'm on my sister's property," I replied calmly. "You're peering into our private community. That's harassment." She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling security." "Are you Beverly Langston?" I asked. Her eyes narrowed. "I'm Beverly Langston, president of the Oak Haven HOA. And you are?" "Lila Morgan's sister." "I understand you've been pressuring her to sell." Beverly's perfect smile appeared, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We've made fair offers. Very generous ones, in fact. Your sister is being unreasonable. She doesn't want to sell her farm. That's her right." "Well," Beverly said, lowering her voice, "that farm won't be operating much longer. The county's become much stricter about health inspections for dairy operations. Such a shame when small businesses can't keep up with regulations." A chill ran up my spine. Before I could respond, a security guard in a golf cart pulled up behind her. "Is there a problem, Mrs. Langston? This woman is trespassing. Please escort her away from our property." "I'm standing on my sister's land," I repeated firmly. "The fence line isn't exactly where she thinks it is. We had it surveyed." That night, as Lila and I were having dinner, her phone rang. It was Dr. Sharma. "I rushed the tests," he said, his voice on speaker. "Lila, someone's been poisoning your cow. The sample shows a chemical found in industrial cleaners. It's not something that would naturally occur." Lila's face went white. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. I've contacted the county agricultural office. They're sending someone tomorrow. You should also call the police." After hanging up, Lila just sat there, stunned that I was about to comfort her when we heard a noise outside. Through the kitchen window, I spotted two teenagers running away from the barn. We raced outside in time to see them disappearing through a gap in the fence into Oak Haven Estates. The milk storage tank's lid was open. "Don't touch anything," I warned, pulling Lila back. We need to call the police right now. As we headed back to the house, something crunched under my foot. It was a note in a plastic bag, weighted down with a rock. Sell now or watch everything you love wither away. Officer Derrickson didn't seem impressed by our evidence. He took the note, looked around half-heartedly, and sighed. I understand you're upset about your sick cow, but accusing the Oak Haven HOA of poisoning your animals is a serious claim. Do you have any actual proof it was them? We saw teenagers running back to their neighborhood. I insisted. Teenagers trespass all the time. Doesn't mean the HOA sent them. Lila stepped forward. I've received multiple pressure tactics from them to sell my land. Then my cow gets poisoned, and we find this threatening note. He shrugged. Correlation isn't causation, ma'am. I'll file a report, but without clear evidence. After he left, we sat at her kitchen table, feeling defeated. They're going to get away with it, Lila whispered. No, they're not. We're going to catch them in the act. The next morning, I went to the hardware store and bought security cameras while Lila met with the county agricultural inspector. I installed them at key points around the property. I also bought test kits for water contamination and took samples from Lila's well that by afternoon. The county inspector had confirmed Dr. Sharma's findings and ordered Lila to stop all milk production until further testing could be done. News spread quickly, and by evening her phone was ringing with customers canceling standing orders. I can't believe this, Lila said, hanging up. That was Greenfield Market. They've carried my milk for 2 years. Did they say why? Someone told them my farm was under investigation for contamination issues. They can't risk their reputation. A notification pinged on my phone. Motion detected on one of our new cameras that we watched the live feed as a man in an Oak Haven security uniform walked along the fence line, then climbed over onto Lila's property. That's Mark Bentley, Lila whispered. Beverly's right-hand man on the HOA board. We watched in shock as he approached the cattle water trough with something in his hand. Before he could do anything, I hit the alarm button on the security app. A loud siren blared across the property. Mark jumped, dropped whatever he was holding, and ran back toward the fence. Call the police. I told Lila as I raced outside that I reached the water trough and found a small bottle labeled Industrial Descaler, poison. I took photos of it exactly where it lay, then used a stick to carefully move it into a plastic bag. This time a different officer responded, Detective Riley Monroe. She took the evidence seriously, bagging the bottle properly and taking statements. The camera footage is clear, she agreed after reviewing it. This is criminal trespass and attempted poisoning of livestock. We'll bring Mr. Bentley in for questioning immediately. By nightfall, Mark Bentley had been arrested. Beverly Langston arrived at the police station with a lawyer, claiming Mark was conducting his own investigation because they suspected Lila of running an illegal operation. Detective Monroe wasn't buying it. Mrs. Langston, your security person was caught on camera with a bottle of industrial poison on private property. That's not an investigation. That's a crime. And so the unraveling began. The rest of the story unfolded with revelations of long-standing corruption, environmental violations, bribery, and worse. The Paradise Hills HOA, so pristine on the surface, was a cesspool of criminal activity beneath. And they had underestimated the wrong farm girl. Lila Morgan didn't just survive. She exposed them, defeated them, and reclaimed her future. Her cows mooed again. Her fields greened again. And the people of this small town remembered what community truly meant, standing together when the powerful try to divide and conquer, because some things, no matter the price, simply aren't for sale.